No, pause it. Good morning. I'm sorry. Good afternoon, everybody. This is Dee with Unplug Ministries podcast, and I am here today with a good friend of mine who was on the Global Grief Conference with us, and she has, from the what I heard of going attending your class, she has a lot of wonderful things to share and to be helpful with everybody. And I want her to share her story to why what got her to this point of doing what she's doing now, and why she does it to be an inspiration and a motivation to many people. And I think once you hear her story and read about it, hear about it, speak with her about it, you will understand why she is a wonderful grief educator, a grief coach, and how she can help you as well. So, Sherry, because we gabbed too much beforehand, I'm going to
Yeah.
let you get started.
Okay, Coach D, thank you very much. Hi, everyone. My name is Sherrie Dunlevy. I call myself an inspirationista. So what is that? Well, that's a name you give yourself when you don't have a regular job description. I feel like I've been assigned by God to inspire people to live their best lives, to live with purpose and passion and joy. And one of the things that keeps us from our joy sometimes is our grief. And I know that because 23 years ago, when I was a television news anchor, I lost my son, Brandon. I was a mom to Trey, who was 3 at the time. I was married. My audience had followed me from falling in love with my husband to getting married to having my first child to burying my youngest child. And so it was quite a journey. And I had to leave that career after a year because I was carrying too much grief. I had the grief at home, and then I was carrying the pain of the world as I was doing the news each day. So I had to go home and I had to heal, and I wanted to be mom. But and I thought I was doing a pretty good job. But here's the thing, my son grew up, and when he became a senior in high school, he was getting ready to leave for college, and I started grieving in a whole other way. You see, I was losing my second son, not to death, but to life as I knew it. And all of a sudden, all the grief that I didn't take care of with Brandon, my son that I lost to death, came flooding in. And that's when I hired a grief coach, and it changed my life. 13 years after my son died, and I finally addressed my grieving issues, the things that were deep down inside of me that I knew that were there, that were living inside of me, that had caused me back pain and back surgery, that had kept me from, I was described like those 13 years I was living in black and white, and now I'm living in color again. And it's all because I got to the root of that grief and I got it out. And once that happened, I knew that there was this big life out there, and God wants us to live a big life. And see, I covered a lot of people's stories when I was a television news anchor and a reporter. I covered one woman in particular whose daughter died in a flood. And 6 years later, I reported on them finding a woman's body at on the banks of the Ohio River. And it was this woman, and she took her life at the place where they pulled her daughter's body out. And so it was so odd, Dee, because the moment that Brandon died, Janet popped into my head, and I said, I can't be Janet. You see, because I think God plants something in all of us. And just because our child has died doesn't mean that we should die with them. We have to take something from that experience and learn from it and grow through it and help other people, because there are always going to be people coming from behind us. And so I was praying to God, and I said, God, I have a hard time being in other people's pain. What do you want me to do? And it was very clear to me when he said, I don't want you in other people's pain. There are professionals for that. I want you shining the light on hope and healing.
Yes.
And so that is what I feel like my job is, Dee. Does that make sense?
Yes.
I can coach people through their grief, but they have to want to be on the path to hope and healing and living a good life. Because if you lay, you decay. And if you want to get up and you want to do the work and you want to move in that direction, I'm here to help you. So that's my story in a nutshell.
So, yeah, and I sort of remember now reading about you being a news anchor. Did you ever want to go back to being a news anchor, or were you sort of afraid to?
No, I transitioned after my son went into school, and I was a radio talk show host for 12 years, and I really enjoyed that. No, the day's news, you see it, well, in 24-hour news, you see it all the time. But back in the day, you had a noon newscast, a 5 newscast, a 6 and 11. So, I was involved in the world's news 24/7, and that just took too much of a toll on me. All that negative news, the war, the fighting, the politics, and I just realized that's too heavy on my soul. So I have no desire to go back to that career. It served me well. It allowed me to interview people for my book, How Can I Help? So, I mean, the skills that I learned from that, I have no regrets from doing that career, but it ended as it should have ended.
Yeah, and you said something earlier. I'm trying to remember what it was, but when you had to grieve again after your son graduated from high school and leaving for college, that is one of the 43 types of grief. Is
Yeah.
that people don't realize that even graduation or weddings is considered grief, and some people are like, are you crazy? No, think about it. If you really seriously think about it, it's still an emotional loss because
Right.
even if your child is still well alive, they're leaving your home, they're starting a new, fresh life on your own. And so that's like all of a sudden you feel like you have to start all over again. And in
Mm-hmm.
a sense, you don't want to, but at the same time, you're happy that your child is finally grown up and moving on. So you have
Right.
those mixed emotional pain that you were going through.
Exactly.
I just can't believe that you were saying about that one lady, though. I just like, oh, that's enough to put.
Yeah.
It triggers. It's a triggering thing. Once you
And
get that one loss, even if it's your child, it's anything like that. It becomes a triggering thought, and that
right.
might be the reason why so many people have a hard time of finding what we find as the healing and joy. And I think once you find that healing point, or you come to that point to finding the healing in the joy, it no longer becomes a trigger. But you
Right.
find a way to substitute, instead of allowing it to heal, you allowed it to, you find something new and positive to exchange, to change over.
And I think you have to choose it too. I
Yep.
really do think you have to choose it. And that's why I always tell us, because I coach women primarily, and I always tell them, if you put your everything into someone or something else, if that disappears from your life, then you're left with you. Who is that person? And so that's why I'm saying sometimes, if we lose our children to graduation or weddings or to death, and if they have been our entire life, we're left with someone we don't even know.
Yes.
And so we have to get to know that person. And it's scary sometimes. I've run into women that don't even remember what their favorite color or their favorite kind of ice cream is, because they just eat whatever they buy, whatever their husband likes, whatever their children likes. And they just, they don't even fix their own favorite meals. They fix whatever everybody else wants. And so grief sometimes wipes the slate clean, and you're left with you. Who is that person? What does she like? What's important to her? And I think sometimes, those are some of our biggest lessons, and they're hard lessons. And that's why it's so easy to just go to sleep or eat or walk away from it or stuff it down with Oreos and,
Emotional eating.
yeah,
And
yeah.
that's what I'm still guilty of. I can admit I'm still guilty of that because for some reason for me, that's the only way. And I'm not excusing it because it's not a good excuse. But that's for me. That's my emotional escape.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
and I catch myself and I'll tell myself, you know what you're doing. Why are you doing this? But I keep doing it. So I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, you know what, you're aware you're doing it, but you don't do anything about it, which you should do something about it because you should know better. But sometimes it's like, I think it's still a little bit of that depression. That
Yeah. Yeah. You know what to say, and say, I have the Graduating Grief podcast, the Graduating Grief Academy, the Graduating Grief Facebook group. So graduating from your pain, stepping into purpose, passion, and joy. Okay.
right,
That's the goal. But if you think that you're never going to have a sad day, that you're never going to have a throw the covers over me, eat ice cream, like
yeah.
that's ridiculous. You lost your person. You miss them. You're a human being. That's normal. The graduation means, okay, I've accepted what has happened. I'm willing to do the work that I need to do to get through this. And I'm not going to camp here anymore, right? I'm not going to live in this space of darkness anymore. There is light and I have purpose and my life can make an impact. And so I'm willing to step into that.
And see, I understand that, and I know that, but it's like, in a sense, there's that part of my brain that's still, and I hate to use this word, but it's the only word I can think of. I'm still stuck in that one part to cause the depression or whatever it is that's causing the emotional eating. So,
Right.
then I get mad at myself because I gained the weight and I'm trying to lose the weight. And
Mm-hmm.
then I hear, well, when you get to your age, it's hard to lose weight. And I'm like, okay, you got to stop using that as an excuse because I know a lot of people who has lost the weight. But I understand what you're saying. So tell us about your book that you wrote.
Well, I wrote the book, How Can I Help? Because when we lost, and Dee, you might be able to relate to this because a lot of people relate to this. After you lose someone you love, you have people that are there for you, and people that you thought would be there just disappear out of your life. You can't understand it. You can't make rhyme or reason out of it. And people that you never knew step into your life. But I think that, and my husband and I had 3 of our closest friends just disappear from our life. And 6 years later, one of them popped back in just to see what we were up to and how we were doing. And I thought, that's odd. What was that about? And that got me to thinking about, wow, what was that about? And why do people abandon you when you need them the most, especially if they're supposed to be the people that love and care about you the most? So
Right.
I kept looking for a book. And again, I felt God saying, Sherrie, look all you want, but it's not going to be written until you write it.
No,
So,
it's written. It's actually written, and I'm going to tell you about the book because this is the class I actually teach. And I'm glad you brought that up, and I'm glad you have it in your book because I think it needs to be told over and over and over and by different people and by different books. Um, I teach the class how to become an effective comforter. And I got the idea from Dr. H. Norman Wright, and he wrote
okay.
the book of what to say and what not to say, because the whole book is basically on the whole reason why people disappear from us when we're grieving is because they're uncomfortable with our grief.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So it's easier for them to run, hide, vanish, not call, not write, not text, not email, because they're so uncomfortable with your grief. They think by now, and I hear this from my relatives a lot, you should get over it by now. You should have moved on by now. And they
Mm-hmm.
don't get you. That just does not happen when you lose a child. It eventually does happen, but it's a matter of choice.
Right.
But not everybody understands or knows about that choice.
No.
I didn't know either until I started digging in and researching it. Probably like what you did too.
Right.
That we were trying. Where did everybody go?
Right.
They all say, I'll be there for you when you need me," but then they're nowhere to be found. And I heard
Well, or they say, let me know what I can do.
yeah,
You're never going to tell them. You're never going to tell them because so what I did and how my book is different is that I didn't have a pastor, a priest, a doctor. I interviewed people like you who have lost someone they loved, who've gone through divorce, who have lost their job, who've been diagnosed with cancer, all these things where people abandon you, who have made it through to the other side. And I said, share with me, what did your friends and family do that was most helpful? And so they tell you, this is what they did. This was what was so amazing. This was what wasn't so helpful. And so this does two things. This gives you a lot of suggestions of things that really do help, because these are the people who've gone through it and said they do help. Okay, the true experts. And the second thing it does as a griever allows you to understand that sometimes people are uncomfortable and say things in an awkward manner
yes,
or do things awkwardly, but that's because we don't talk about these things. And so extend grace to them because they're doing the best they can. Don't judge them for saying the wrong thing. At least they stepped up and tried to say something. Look at their heart. Look at their intent.
well, I also look at it this way. A lot of times people are not have not been taught by their parents the
Right,
appropriate things to say and do. And their parents may be guilty of it because their parents didn't teach them.
right,
So it's what society teaches us how to deal with grief.
right, right. Absolutely. It's the fear of it could be contagious or happen to them. It scares them so much
Yes.
they can't handle it. It's they've never been taught, or it's they want to do something, but they're afraid they're going to make it worse.
Yes. Exactly.
And so I'm just not going to do anything because I don't want to make it worse. But that is worse because that person is not just grieving. Now they feel abandoned as they're
Yes.
grieving.
Exactly. They're
Mhm.
grieving again they
Yes,
because you said you would be there and then you weren't.
it's
And then you
compounded.
vanished.
Yeah. Hmm.
And then you vanish. Now they're grieving. Now the grief they've already gone through is now, what's the word? Expanded.
Right.
Now
Yeah.
they're grieving even more and heavier because not only did they just lose their loved one, they also feel like they lost you
Yeah.
in a sense. You know?
Well, they did.
Yeah.
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 So that's why I wrote the book, because I wanted real life. And, that's where I think where God was preparing me. I had interviewed people all my life in another career. I'd never interviewed people for something like this because
God
I
is
kept saying, but
preparing you.
I'm not an expert. I'm not an expert. And it's like, you don't need to be the expert. You
Yeah.
need to find the people who this worked for and ask them, what did they do,
Yeah.
to help you? And
Yeah.
just put their answers in a book. And there's so many different things. And we all have gifts, talents, and abilities that can help someone else.
Well, God is preparing you for this. And it's
I
funny.
think so.
It's funny how we all go through this and we don't know why and we don't understand and sometimes we question God why and God always says just wait, just wait, I have a reason for this and it's gonna come up and pretty soon you're gonna have that aha moment and you're gonna say, oh, that's what it was. God was preparing me for something greater and I just didn't understand it back then.
Right.
So
And people say, well, I'm not willing to lose my son for something like that. And I'm like, well, I wasn't willing either. It's what you do with what has happened.
yes,
If you stay in the cycle of why God, why this, why me, why my son, you're never going to get out of it. But if you say, what now?
yes.
What now, God? What do you want from me now?
And unfortunately, a lot of people don't what's the word I want to use? Don't understand that or don't have the knowledge or the experience to understand that because society taught them differently. You know, if you're
Well,
gonna grieve, go to your room, go in the closet because we don't want to hear about it. We don't want to know about it. So that's why so many people are still stuck in their grief because the grief is overwhelming them that it sort of blinds them and takes that hearing away. And
yeah.
all I can say is, grieve on your timetable and don't let anybody tell you differently. But when you're ready, you're going to hear his voice.
Yeah.
And then you'll know why. He'll tell
Right.
you why. So
Hmm.
it's just when you're ready, you'll all of a sudden hear and start to see things you never thought was there.
Be open to the lesson from it. Just be
Yes.
open your heart. Don't close your heart. Open your heart. And I don't know why God took my son. And if I know, but I can't control that. If I never have the answer, if that's all I'm doing is seeking that answer, I'll be miserable the rest of my life.
Yeah.
And I just don't want to be miserable the rest of my life. I only get one life. Brandon's life and death ended, in 1999, but mine continues here in 2022. I can't imagine 23 years passing and me choosing misery over joy.
Yes. Yes. And somehow through it all, God somehow brought you to this point of being able to be an author, to be able to be a grief coach, to be an inspiration and a motivation, and to help people that maybe would have never happened if you had not lost your son,
Right.
or if your other son would not had graduated from high school.
Right.
Sometimes we step into a path that we don't know where it's going to lead us.
Right.
You just have to trust them. And with something I read recently is that um, sometimes we just have to allow him to do what he does. And we may not understand it, but we have to trust him no matter what because he will do the rest.
Mm. Hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
He will take
Just be
care of
the
us.
channel. Just be the channel for his love and goodness.
Yes. So
Yeah.
where can we find your book? Is it on Amazon?
You can go to Amazon. You can go to sherriedunlevy.com or graduatinggrief.com. You can purchase the book there. That's where you can find my courses. I do have a positive online support group on Facebook. And what I mean by that is we don't feed the pain, we feed the hope and healing.
Yes.
We allow the pain, but our members come in and offer hope and healing and encouragement and support. And there's a big difference if you've been
Yes.
on online, support groups. So that's where you can find me, Dee.
Yes. And I was so glad that you were part of our Global Grief Conference. Um, we I don't know if you know this, but we're seriously thinking of doing this again next year, except it's not going to be virtual. So um, we're thinking about doing it. When I say live, I don't mean virtual live. I
Uh-huh.
mean,
In person.
we're gonna do it in person, and once the committee's formed and we start to plan, and we have a date. We do have a date. Um, Tony wants to stick to the certain date,
Yeah.
the end of April, the beginning of May. So we do have a date. We just don't have a location yet. But this
Okay.
time, I think we're gonna really um, provide a lot of great workshops and booths and seminars from people like you. And I hope you will. Uh, oh, we got 10 more minutes. Um, a lot of great things that I think in person will help uh, people that really
Yeah.
need it. And I hope that where are you from again?
West Virginia.
Oh, that's right.
I live in West
That's
Virginia. I'm
right,
on the
West
East
Virginia.
Coast.
There are a
Hmm.
lot of people are going to want to come to this, and
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
once, hopefully by Christmas, most everything will be where we can
Open
start
back up.
working in it. Yeah.
That's
So
what we
that
hope.
would give
So
people more time to register and save their spots and all that stuff. And I think, I feel God blessed us this last time. And we feel like God's going to really richly bless us on the next one. And I hope you will be willing to want to come and to either speak at a seminar or at least have a workshop. And
yeah,
maybe you and I
absolutely.
should team up on a workshop because we both see the same and understand the same thing.
Right.
We both have a way of teaching that class as well. We I think it's just something that God calls us to do, you
Right.
know. And
We all have it in us. We all have it in us. We have to choose it. And if we hear the call, if we say yes and trust the process, it
yes,
will unfold before our very eyes.
You know, the funny thing, I was thinking the other day, many years ago when I went to college, I also wanted to study journalism, but I
Hmm.
also wanted to teach elementary school.
Oh,
Well, money kept me from doing that, but I did study media to learn cameras and voice and all that stuff. Um, and then it just didn't happen because of money. And then here it is, years and years later, and I'm teaching, but I'm teaching something totally different than what I went to college for. And yet,
yeah.
somehow, God has His way of placing things in our hearts, and and we're like, I went to college for this, but I ended up doing this. So, but anyway, so again, tell us the name of your book and your website.
Okay. The name of my book is How Can I Help? It's your go-to guide for helping loved ones through life's difficulties. It's a very easy read, and you can get it at Amazon, Barnes and Noble, online, or you can go to sherriedunlevy.com to get that, or graduatinggrief.com. I also have a quiz set up that helps people identify where they are in their grief journey. It's at graduatinggrief.com/quiz. And so it's, are you ready to graduate? And you answer 12 questions, and it lets you know where you are in your grief journey, whether you're at the very, very beginning, whether you're in the middle and moving your way through, or whether you're pretty well good with this, but yet you still might have some fear about or some guilt about moving on, because we have fear and guilt and anxiety as we try to move back into living a life because we let other people tell us what we should or shouldn't be doing or how
They,
we should be
they
acting.
dictate what we should and
Yeah.
shouldn't be doing.
And you get to live life on your terms now because this was your grief and this is your life and you
Right.
get to call the shots. And so I help build the confidence for
Good.
people that, because sometimes you might need to let people go,
Yes.
there are relationships that aren't good for you. And finally, I always say grief is the great revealer. It reveals who's important to you and who's not, who shows up for you and who doesn't,
Yes.
who supports you and who's in your corner and who says they're in your corner but is not.
Yes.
And it reveals all this to you, and so now you get to decide if they deserve a seat at your table and in your life.
And grief, yes, and that's a good way to say grief teaches us a lot of things, not about the memories of someone that we lost, but the experiences that we've had in life that helps
Mm-hmm.
us have a better understanding what grief has been about all this time and how
Mm-hmm.
it has taught us to be better people. In
Yes.
other words, that's what it does. It teaches us to be better people, but we had to open our eyes to see that. So,
Right.
Sherry, I know this is about ready to come to an end, and I don't want it to cut us off like it did with the last person. I'm like, how can you do that, Zoom? So it says we have 5 minutes, but I'm gonna be on the safe side.
That's all right. That's all right. Yeah.
Everybody, I am so thankful that you all had the opportunity to join us with Unplug Grief Ministries podcast. And Sherry, I am so delighted. I'm going to want to rebook you again to come in again. Except
Okay.
this time, now we sort of got to know who you are. Next time, maybe there'll be something you can teach us and help us so that we have a
Sure.
better understanding of dealing with our grief better. So I'm
Sure.
going to be able to rebook you maybe for the fall or something like that.
You
I
got it.
might call you sooner, but I'm so thankful that you are here and that you shared your story and you shared what's going on and how we can be a blessing for others.
Mhm.
And I'm thankful that you also wrote the book, and I'm planning to get your book and a whole bunch of other books too, and be able to um, let me eat it and drink it and
Right.
graduate from my grief, because I
Right.
think no matter how long we might be grief coaches, we're always going to learn something new from each other. Thankful.
Absolutely.
So,
Absolutely.
and I remember everybody, don't forget that you have this opportunity to go to Sherry's website. I think you have two of them, right? And
Yes.
order the book.
Graduating grief is the grief one, but Sherrie Dunlevy is the speakers and the workshops and all of
There
that
we
I
go. See, that will help you so you can
yes.
get in there learn more about Sherrie, learn about grasp the classes she's teaching or helping you through it, and be encouraged. I always tell everybody the 7 letter word for encouragement is comfort. Comfort is another word for encouragement. And that's why we're here. We're here to bring comfort. But while we're bringing comfort, we want to also encourage you and motivate you and uplift you and give you, help you to take that deep breath and feel that fresh breath of air again come into your soul and to live that happy life. We don't want the grief to drag us down. We're not saying you stop grieving for your child or for your loved one. You can, but now you're going to grieve a new way, and it's going to be bring the healing and the joy back into your life, and that's what we want for everybody. And the good news is that when Jesus comes again, we're all going to meet in the skies with Him, and we're all going to go to someplace for eternity, and there'll be no death, no sorrow, no pain, no nothing. So that's the good news about all this. So thank you again, everybody, for coming to Unplug Grief Ministries podcast. You can catch us at our website, www.unpluggrief.org, and our Facebook is Unplug Grief, Grief and Life Coaching and Consultants. And you can catch us also on Anchor, anchor.fm/grief hyphen, I'm sorry, unplug hyphen grief. And we look forward to seeing you tomorrow. We have 2 wonderful people coming in tomorrow, so we hope you'll be able to join us. Thank you and have a wonderful rest of the Thursday. We'll see you again.